Who's ready for Monday motivation? 3 takeaways from last week. So I'm going to look at my list here. We discussed culture, spirituality and science, finding your own identity, transforming loneliness. These aren't the full titles, they're abbreviations. We discussed your ability to choose and direct free will from the heart, as well as the gifts of life and all that comes your way. Possessions with inner growth in mind, and we closed the week with transcending judgmental situations. But we also had our first spiritual and human elements episode, Finding Your Soul's Blueprint with Brendan Tobias. So if you haven't watched it yet, you can find the video on YouTube, or you can tune into the podcast if you prefer listening while driving. And on that note, for Monday motivation, we have 4, the 3 takeaways, but with finding your soul's blueprint, it's very important that you, how can I put it, acknowledge the aspect of the heart. In fact, that's our first takeaway. So when you listen to the episode, you'll hear about what Brendan does and how he supports people to find their soul's blueprint through astrology. Find meaning identify, gain clarity, and then, as we had discussed in the episode, we discussed how free will has everything to do with it. So environment, but also your choices. Choosing to follow your heart is a choice you've been given from the moment you began thinking. And although we know of many different reasons why, environment, so sociological components, psychological, family upbringing, trauma, not trauma, subconscious and conscious, at the end of the day, we all develop the same way. Our emotional brain hemisphere is the first to develop from 0 to 2 years of age. So every experience is organized in a sensorial primary consciousness, smells, images. So in that flight fight is organized at that age. So that's the age where you're not choosing anything really. You are responding to inputs. And those experiences have a foundation of emotions that our psychologists share with us. But essentially, we are not thinking. We are perceiving and reacting. So again, your flight fight is organizing. That nervous system is organizing. And then we've also learned that there's this one psychologist, neuroscientist, I believe, I need to buy the book still, but they break down the actual development of the brain from the moment you're born, so 0 to 5 years of age, besides it being constructed from bottom up, so the built, the actual infrastructure, the influences on an optimally performing brain with the neurosynapses and what they do, firing in mind. So these are not exact wordings, but the essence of what usually we're discussing and reading, and from that neuroscientific point of view. And this is to say that choosing from the heart is about choosing what feels in tune to your journey, and that you begin from a very young age battling with your parents of what you can or cannot do. And essentially that is the beginning of areas that, sensorially speaking, you may or may not have in your awareness until you choose to say, wait a minute, from my heart and my mind, what is going on? Why am I getting angry? Why am I getting upset? What is the deal with how I'm perceiving life? Because we perceive life from our heart and our mind, and they both can work together. But until you go to your heart, you're actually functioning from the place where you began being able to explain yourself and where they taught you how to explain yourself. And at that point in your journey, you are already organized, sensorially speaking, your primary consciousness. But it is still very accessible to you. In fact, when you choose unconditional love and neutrality, as we discussed for the inner growth mindset, journey, and lifestyle approach, you stand in your place. You pay attention to the body element. Nothing's going on that's physically threatening. I don't need to get angry, sad, upset. I can evaluate why I'm angry, sad, upset. With our secondary consciousness as human beings, and as Carl Jung puts it, when we explore without being judgmental or determining a right or wrong within our own moment of exploration, we transcend and enter that transcendent function and make leaps of consciousness, as he puts it. Why? Because you're in the moment and not defending, which is instead what happens when you begin just fueling the upset. You're already engaged in your emotional brain hemisphere's chosen response from the minute you began organizing it. So To be clear, when I say you can choose from the heart, it is obviously with the knowledge that there are other things that are created emotionally, but that doesn't mean you can't choose. In fact, now that you're an adult or a young adult or even a young teenager who maybe is coming across this, you can choose to be a loving human being. And the first thing you want to do is be loving with your person. And so you remove yourself from any circumstance if you can. And if you can't, you simply ensure your safety, which again, we usually are talking about interactions, nothing physically life-threatening. That's for other, that there's defense classes for that. Doesn't mean you need to be angry and or negative towards humanity. There's defense classes. You can feel secure by learning defense. So it's always our choice how to move and navigate things. Of course, the external influence is that. So at this point, there may be certain influences that have brought in more of a predisposition towards judgment, but you're always able to choose from the heart. And when you can do that with unconditional love and neutrality towards yourself and others, you make leaps of consciousness for you. You work with your nervous system to bring it to a place of neutrality versus ego response and fear, and staying in that boat. And that's where your beautiful journey begins of consistent inner growth, as well as following your heart and getting to the essence of you and really using all of that energy, which is usually used in our brain and our bodies, because you're not afraid, you're not in the defense mode. When people get, come your way and maybe they upset you, they don't upset you. That's the point. They come your way, it's another human being, they mean no threat to you, whatever their opinion may be, you can have a conversation. It makes you effective in many, many ways. In fact, we talked about empowerment and the empowered individual and leader when it comes to the transcending judgmental situations. So tune into that one. Your takeaway 2 is that you can transform all situations into something that you grow from, and that you grow love, you expand your mind, you learn more information. You can actually make anything a positive as you process the emotions that are in the quote unquote negative. So I don't like using those terms, but to try and make a point, you can transcend and transform any and all circumstances with the mind, since you're thinking it anyways, and your heart, you're feeling it, if you sit and work with the person who's experiencing that moment, versus focusing on labeling and staying in duality and staying in that 3D, 4D space where fear continues to exist. This is why the nervous system of your body keeps responding, and your first response is societal engagement. So you're going to use whatever is part of that foundation, which is also part of the ego self, which is why it's about sitting with you first of all, and then slowly you achieve impartiality, the advanced place of the inner growth program. Your takeaway 3 is, where is it? I lost it. Okay, bringing together opposites. I discussed it actually. So, ability to choose from the heart and with the heart. To be able, and thanks to neutrality, bring opposites together. So even if you're more spiritual or scientific, to be able to evaluate with an open mind all information and use it. 3, transform all situations. So all the gifts that life brings you, they actually can become gifts. Loneliness, you can use it to explore your person, to grow into becoming more of what you want, and to surround yourself with the people that help you feel expanded. And we've discussed that. And finally, for the finding your soul's blueprint, if you go and listen, I'm sure you'll find it very fascinating and interesting. And really, for anybody who is in that realm, it's ideal. You could get clarity and see what's what. And from that, you use everything to add. It's not that you have to, like the labels. Don't use it as a label. Use it as an additional piece of information that you could look to if you feel you want it. Like I have friends who are considering it because they want that clarity. So they have a belief system and they know that the planet's affected. So for them, it makes sense. But we talked about a lot of other things, like the definition of true love, according to Brendan, because he actually also reads tarot and he helps people with their relationships through that. So it's very fascinating. And anything else? We have more of the human and spiritual elements YouTube videos. I'm grabbing people along the way and trying to see that they join in so that we can talk about experiences of everyday life with inner growth in mind, but also with those spiritual elements for we want to include more individuals in our conversations. So it's not only about that. It's actually about that plus the human elements. In fact, the next conversations that I'll be having, one is going to be around motherhood and homeschooling and children, and a specific education homeschooling system that she was telling me about, which covers some spirituality aspects, and I immediately was thinking of the psychological aspects. Another person that said yes, it's going to be about something related to breathing techniques, and I think it was Tai Chi, I don't remember, but this is where we will talk about that methodology and their life experiences. So when I say human elements, spiritual elements, it doesn't mean necessarily it's focused. It's a conversation and exploring various aspects. So stay tuned for that. I'll let you know when the time is coming, and in the meantime, have a wonderful week.